Okay, let's do a little something out here because I wanted to get the clock off the camera. Sure, put some white silicone on my black camera. Okay, I got the body cam on. No, I got it in my hand. And meanwhile, I'm going to go up here if I want to show somebody something. When I'm going up here, I might as well raise or do whatever it is I'm going to do to it. Okay. Does that stay there? Probably not. No, it's not going to. Well, that'll stay there, but however. Okay, listen, this is a 220 watt 12 volt system. That's the wire that it comes with. I follow that gauge all the way down. The casing is larger on this, but the gauge of the wire is the same. These are waterproof, and that's where it is. Now, I normally keep it flat, except for the winter months, as you can see. I raise it up. Now, I did have it raised up quite a bit at one time, but I noticed that the wind likes to take it away. This has actually hit the ground twice from up here. So now all I do is I just lift it one cylinder. Just enough to give it a little angle and help keep the snow off it. So that's what I'm going to do now. So hold on a minute. You guys are probably not going to see any of this. But we will do what we can do. There, that's all I need. Now, what I do to help hold it a little bit, put a little silicone there, and I feed some through here. So it catches and locks on. I mean, the way you put this up is your own way. I just do it this way because one is I can't walk on this roof. This roof is made of plastic corrugation, corrugated material, and it's got some shrink wrap over it to help hold it. But other than that, that's how it is. And that's the way it'll sit. I won't have any problems with it. Now, normally this is all tacked down and underground, but this came down one year, as I told you. So when I put it back up, I just left it like this for now, thinking I was going to fix it. You know, bury that back into the ground. However, I didn't. Now I have two wires coming out of it right now. One of them is direct bury, which if you're going to go underground, direct bury is good. On the 110 volt, the gray. The yellow is the 12 volt. I should have used direct bury, but I didn't have it at the time. But this feeds the power in the shed, because the shed has a 110 volt breaker in there. Now I used to have all the batteries lined up out here, and right here used to be a 40-foot tower for the wind turbine. However, that panel has always been on the roof. So let's just talk about the panel. Panel's up there, always been there. Wind blew it down twice. I put it back up. Someday I will fix this, but it works. It goes underground over there, and it goes in the wall. That's a 220 watt, 12 volts. Gives me about 18. I got two things going here. Right now it's showing 12.7 on the charge, which is fine. Hold on a minute, I'm going to put this down because I want to get the jacket off. Whoop! Yeah, I'm going to drop you again. I'm not sure, but I think I may have a problem with my neighbor. Yeah. I'll explain it to you. Let me turn some lights over here. Okay. So anyway, what happens is that wire comes into the house or into the shop here, right there, and it goes up into the controller charger, and that takes care of the batteries being charged so that it doesn't overcharge, which comes down into here. Negative and positive side, positive, negative. Make sure you always mark them so you know. If you keep the color code the same color, if anybody has to work on it other than you, they'll kind of know black is negative, red is positive. So it's always good to kind of stay within the colors that people are familiar with, because you may not always be the one working on it. So meanwhile, we're hooked up to the batteries. Each battery is tied in from here, from the battery, the positive side to the positive strap, negative to the negative strap. Each one is set. Now from here to there doesn't make too much of a difference. This is basically for charging, you know, and actually taking out of. But from there, I wanted the 4 gauge. So this is the 4 gauge right here. So on both sides, the output coming from all these batteries are going into 4 gauge wire. And I'm only feeding 12 volts. This is not tied into the grid. This is just a separate 12 volt system. So that comes up and it goes into a fuse box that I have here. And I do have an outdoor floodlight hooked up to it here with its own fuse, but there's a fuse here for it. And then this tap here, which is tapped in with another 4 gauge, and this is also grounded over here to the ground here. But here we go, up. 4 gauge on both the negative and the positive. So all my batteries are tied in individually to the same. And then I bring them up with 4 gauge. They go up, they come across here, come across, comes across here. Now why I went with 4 gauges, because I'm running quite a bit of wire here. And what happens is you end up with a line loss. So I wanted to make sure that I had as much amps. I'll always have the volts, but it's the amps I need. You know, when you work on anything, it could be 12 volts, but you also need the amps. So I went with the heavier because of the length of wire. And I got 4 gauge from here. Then it goes up, which you're not seeing it here, up, and also goes down to a winch. I'll show you that in a minute. But that is only 10 gauge going down to the winch. But it goes up underneath. I'll take you on the other side now and show you. We're still on the 4 gauge off of the 12 volts. Everything I'm showing you right now is off 12 volt batteries and being fed by that one solar panel. And then there's the 12 volts over there. Goes up, comes across the rafter, comes down over there in the corner. And it comes down over here. I got a piece of copper tubing that I banged and bent that I use for a ground strap. I think you're seeing that. And then I brought the positive side down into a fuse box. So every radio and everything that I have tied up to 12 volts is going through the fuse box. I'm not running it direct into a 110 system. I don't care to do that. So that's what I have there. Then I have that switch. That switch allows me to turn everything off. So right now there's nothing on for 12 volts. I'm totally disconnected, so I don't have to worry about any little drains or anything that may be draining out. The other reason is I do have a power supply here. This is a 35 amp surge, 27 amp continuous. You always want to go by the continuous. You don't want to go by the surge. So it says 35, but it's only 27. If I want to run the power supply